natives of Arkansas are Arkansas, Ashley, Baxter,
Thy kingdom come, thy
Hail Mary,
Hear, O Israel,
Crawford, Crittenden, Cross,
For thine is the kingdom
full of grace.
the Lord thy God.
Benton, Boone, Bradley,
our Father who art.
Pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Is one.
Dallas, Desha, Drew, Faulkner, Franklin, Fulton.
Only 600 men survived the waiting. But as a result of their help, David Shoup, then a colonel, commanding the Marines at Badio, was able to radio back. Casualties many, percentage dead, unknown, combat efficiency, we are winning. We were winning because men like Lieutenant Bonnie climbed onto the top of the biggest Japanese pillbox and could not be dislodged. Wounded repeatedly, Bonnyman kept firing until he died. But now our bulldozers could move in and seal off the air vents with sand, suffocating the enemy inside. And soon we were sure we were winning, for many of the Japanese, faced with defeat, began killing themselves. That night, the remainder of the enemy force, 500 of them, came out of the cover of their pillboxes and banzaied into our machine guns. "76 hours after our first wave hit the beach, Badio was ours. We assembled our few prisoners, who were in the semi-shock of those who had lost their faith. The Japanese had always known that America's material strength was greater than their own. But they had gone to war believing that war was not just a matching of armaments, but a contest between the Japanese faith in the spiritual and the American faith in material things. "We will match our spirit against their numbers," the Japanese militarists boasted, "and our flesh against their steel." Their spiritual strength, they had faith, would prevail. Then at Tarawa, these few men had seen not only the superiority of our armaments, but far more disillusioning, the willingness of an entire division of Marines to die, if necessary, for their comrades and their country. The greatest tragedy of Tarawa was that there was no way to transmit to Tokyo the word that America was strong, not just in material things, but in those of the spirit as well. Right in the corner was our greeting from the natives of Apamama, who had been taught the words by a Christian missionary. At the very same time that the 2nd Marine Division was embroiled in the bloodiest battle of the war at Tarawa, a few men from that same division, by the luck of the draw, landed on the neighboring atoll of Apamama. Here there were no enemies, just a Marine's dream come true.
Now hear this. Now hear this.
The word was, now that we had taken Tarawa and the adjoining atolls of Kwajalein and Enuitak, our next big hop would be to the Marianas, Saipan, Guam, Tinian, bomber range from Tokyo for the new B-29s coming off the assembly lines. We were now 1,500 miles from Japan. 21 tension-packed days, we took Guam. Before the war, Guam had been American. So here was a homecoming and a liberation. We were among our fellow Americans. At Tinian, we hit them where they weren't. And though we had to wade in, there were no machine guns to greet us. We'd learned our lessons at Tarawa. Tinian was the payoff. In just 7 days, we captured the island that would house the greatest air bases in the Pacific. Tinian was short and sweet for all hands, including the children who captured us. Saipan was the bitter one. Saipan, only 14 miles long, where they held out for 25 fiery days. Saipan, where the senile Japanese commander ordered strict compliance by all his people with a samurai code that demanded victory or death. It was not enough that in the last days of the battle, he ordered his soldiers into the biggest banzai charge of the war. But on a cliff by the sea, the remnants of his army, holding us off with their last rounds of ammunition, ordered the mass suicide of Saipan's Japanese civilians. Powerless to halt the nightmare unreeling before our eyes, our translators broadcast appeal after appeal to the civilians to stop, to live, to let their children live. Some responded, escaping to our lines and to life. But despite our continued appeals, the others were psychologically caught in a web of authority that characterized Japanese society. Even as we pleaded, by the hundreds, mothers and fathers threw their children into the sea and leaped after them. Was this, we wondered, a foreshadowing of things to come? What would happen with the millions of people there when we landed on Japan itself? Even as we were still mopping up in the Marianas, the Air Force's superforts began regular home deliveries to the Emperor's doorstep. While making the rounds, the B-29s would often see below the cone of a volcano that had risen from the sea, a forbidden island of brimstone and ashes, only 5 miles long. Yet long enough for airfields that could offer friendly fighter support, first aid, and above all, safe landings for crippled superforts, whose only other choice would be to ditch in the cold North Pacific. No outsiders had ever set foot on Iwo Jima, the Japanese words for island of sulfur. Its first guests, albeit uninvited, were now to be the United States Marines. But this, we were told, would be no surprise party. They knew we were in the neighborhood and sure to drop in. They'd evacuated all civilians and carefully planned our reception with all the deadly confetti of modern war, shells and shrapnel to be showered down upon our heads by 21,000 unseen hosts, skillfully concealed in 1,500 caves. As best we could, we prepared ourselves for Iwo Jima. We did not then know that, since no matter how we fought the battle, almost every Japanese soldier there would die anyway. It had been proposed that this exclusively military target be shelled from the sea with gas. Then Iwo would be ours with no loss of American lives. But the proposal was disapproved by President Roosevelt because he felt it would set a bad precedent. So now it was up to us to take it with our feet and our fire and our blood.
Land the landing force, the bullhorn bellows. My imaginary dialogue with the Admiral begins. Is this trip really necessary, I ask him. Don't worry, he answers. My big guns have blasted everything ashore. There's nobody alive out there. If you're so sure, I tell him, you go first and send back word to me. But he doesn't answer. He's too busy with the big picture. But it's the little picture that matters to me. Little things like me. Little things like how to keep from getting seasick. All the little things like, am I going to chicken out in front of the others? What would the sergeant do if I screamed? What's the weather like back home today? How will they take it when the telegram comes? Wouldn't it be a shame for a guy so young to die?
From the heights of Mount Suribachi above us, they watched and they waited while the first 3 waves got ashore. Waited while the surf got high. Waited while the boats got swamped. Waited while the beach became cluttered with men and supplies. Waited. 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 We burrowed into the steaming sand, listening to the screams of the incoming shells and our wounded. And thus paralyzed, we waited for death and the corpsmen to come. But one man stood up and shouted, "Let's get the hell off this beach." And so we got off the beach. One of those leading the move inland was Manila John Basilone, until a mortar shell hit him. The hero of Guadalcanal died on Iwo Jima. Also leading the dash up Suribachi was another veteran of Guadalcanal. Accompanied by 2 demolitions men, Tony Stein attacked one pillbox after another. Eight times he raced back to the bombarded beach for more ammo. When his arm was pierced by shrapnel, he got it bandaged and kept on fighting. Finally, while leading still another charge up Suribachi, he was killed. He was awarded the Medal of Honor. To stop the murderous fire on the beach, we had to get tanks ashore. But the magnetic sands were saturated with ceramic mines. So we got down on our hands and knees and dug them out with our bayonets. Offshore, the destroyers moved close to the volcano and blasted point blank at the invisible enemy. By afternoon, we had our artillery ashore. First to fire on Suribachi was a gun called Glamour Gal. Yet the assault gained only 150 yards by the day's end. Thus, all night, they were able to fire down on us. Just before dawn, they hit one of our ammunition dumps.